Tim Kalbach, thank you for your time. The figures that you've seen in the last 2 days, the economic growth numbers and the unemployment numbers, what do they tell us about the state of the Australian economy at the moment?
Well, they tell us firstly there's two Australian economies, one being the mining economy of Queensland and Western Australia, and to some extent New South Wales, and the other being pretty well everything else. And that everything else economy is very soft and getting softer. And the mining economies, as we know, are very strong, with extraordinary rates of growth in new investment and opening up new mines.
How worrying is the soft economy for you personally, and where are the threats there in particular?
Well, I think for Victoria it's particularly worrying. Victoria's now lost 42,000 full-time jobs since April. That's about 1 in 50 jobs in the state has gone, full-time jobs in the state has gone, in net terms. Other southeastern states are also losing jobs by and large, with the exception of New South Wales. We've got basically 3 states that are either in recession or on the brink of it.
That's Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania.
Correct.
And the others are New South Wales in some danger of heading that way or better?
Well, New South Wales has the coal investment in the Hunter Valley, which is keeping it going in terms of output and spending. Otherwise, New South Wales, the Sydney economy is also looking. It's not as bad as Melbourne, certainly, but it's not strong. But Western Australia and Queensland's a very diverse state, of course, and southeastern Queensland is more like New South Wales and Victoria. It's been hit hard by the slump in tourism, particularly from Japan, but in general the total number of foreign visitors to Australia who come here for tourism went down 15% in the last 6 years. And that's impacted very heavily on Queensland because that was where they mainly went. And so the southeast Queensland economy, the tourist economy that's based on tourism, is also suffering.
Essentially, the further northwest you go in this country, the better things are. And yet, of course, the population is in the southeast.
That's right, yes. Almost 70% of Australians live in the southeastern states. But in the 12 months to December, that provided only 20% of the growth in spending. 80% was in the north and the west, in Queensland, WA and the Territory. I'm just concerned about the waste of human resources that you always get when you have this churning in jobs, because a lot of people it's easy to say, oh yes, the people who are laid off can get another job in something or other, but they don't. And often they get jobs that are inferior to the job that they had before.
Are you concerned that the ferocity of this economic change in coming years is going to be far greater than it has been in our recent past?
That's certainly true. I mean, the Treasury itself is warning us that we're only a small part of the way down what they think is going to be a long track, and a lot more jobs are going to go. And don't forget, we've already lost 127,000 jobs in manufacturing since the start of the GFC. Now that's almost as many as we lost in the whole 1991 recession, which we thought was a disaster at the time.
And to an extent, the pain of this has been covered up in the figures by the success of one sector in our economy.
Yes, and by a very curious thing in the labour force figures, where in the last year or so we've had more than 100,000 people who at last year's participation rates would be in the workforce. They're not there anymore. That is to say, the participation rates, the proportion of us who actually are in a job or looking for a job, that's fallen quite sharply over the past year, in the sort of falls you normally only see in a recession.